positive mindset and recognize, the opportunities around how many places AI is going to help us train workforce. In other words, education and skills acquisition is not going to be the same as it was. If anything, it's going to get more complicated and more complex, but there's going to be more opportunity and more support to do it right. So this is just the time when a 22-year-old should be feeling like it, should be feeling optimistic. Not that, oh my God, how am I going to succeed in this, but holy smokes, I want to be one of the best. I want to go out and embrace this right from the start and recognize that my life at this moment in history has more potential than anybody who was born before me. And I think that's true. I think that's an easy argument to make, but we're not making it. We're allowing our young people to be overwhelmed by the uncertainty of their future. Uncertainty is the reality of the future. We're always changing. Certainly the rate of change is accelerating. But part of our job as so-called adults, I always was suspicious about when I was young. I'm even more suspicious now. Our job as adults is to inspire kids and let them recognize that opportunity in front of them is only going to grow and become bigger, but they're going to have to work. They got to apply themselves. They got to really commit themselves.
So, in addition to the many jobs you've already mentioned, you're actually a member of SAG-AFTRA, right? Yes. So, what's your message to the Hollywood studios right now?
It's funny, we've been talking about that. I had a cousin, George Hickenlooper, who was a great film director, and I was kind of like his rabbit's foot. He gave me a cameo in one of his movies. He always thought it did good. He did a movie called Casino Jack, Jack Abramoff, and at the end of a rant that Kevin Spacey does about, you said that man, and at the end, Jet Senator, I think it was Senator Cunningham, steps up and says, remove that man! Well, Kevin Spacey, in his 4-minute rant, did it in one take. My cousin George, when they all left and went off to dinner, I had to do 30 takes to get one. I was the one who said, remove that man! Deeper, louder, whatever. But it has been useful. I mean, he got me to become a member of SAG, which was a joke in itself. But I did see and continue to see things from their point of view. And they are going to have a different reality. And I understand that there's pressure on Netflix and all the streaming media, all these sources. Everyone's got pressure. But the people that actually create the content need to be recognized, and they need my advice to Walt Disney and the major studios, the major creators or funders of content, producers, is don't kill the golden goose right when you're going to have more eggs than you know what to do with. Again, I think their future is only going to get better. But they can't try to exclude or really disenfranchise the culture, the creative culture that exists in terms of how we make films, how we do. Go back over the last 5 or 6 years and look at what
social externality, the social benefit that you're generating is higher for high-income people than for low and middle-income people. It doesn't make it any sense to tie the per dollar subsidy to the marginal tax rate, which is what happens when you have a deduction exclusion. And for those of you who want to read more, there's a Stanford Law Review article that I co-authored from 2006 that lays that all. That's an idea that I think is worth re-injecting into the debate.
I actually remember reading that. The great thing about being out of Congress is, I don't have to pass things. I can just, yeah, exactly. Things can guide out. I agree with a lot of that, actually. I think the most insidious exclusion is the healthcare exclusion. We're subsidizing the wrong people. We're subsidizing the employer sponsorship of healthcare, the person with the highest income tax bracket, and we're subsidizing the people who need it the most, the least, in the lowest income tax bracket. It makes no sense whatsoever to me. So I've always believed in getting rid of that exclusion and bringing it to a fair credit. I think, long story short, I think tax reform is the way out of this. I can tell, the canyon we're going into here in this conversation, the way out of this box canyon is tax reform. And I personally think, Kyle and I at AEI have our own idea of what a good tax reform system looks like. My point is, I think you can get a higher revenue line without sacrificing economic growth, but you're not going to get the kind of distribution tables that I think this building wants. And if you can drop that as a priority and focus on growth and revenue, I think you can get a decent tax reform system. that you could probably get some conservative buy-in if and when it is brought together with entitlement reforms. If there's ever gonna be a grand bargain, it's when we're running into this debt crisis. It's the GDP figures Bob was mentioning. This probably has to be a commission. I remember one of the best persons I ever knew in my public life from this building, Alice Strickland. She and I authored a few of these provisions back in the Bull Simpson days. I think there are things like that you can do that are on the spending side, on entitlements, that when combined with tax reform can get you a higher revenue line as a percent of GDP without sacrificing growth and enhancing international competitiveness. So I think that's better fertile ground than playing the baseline game, the political game, the middle class game. This discussion we just had, that's how it's gonna end. It's just the way we said it. But if you kind of raise your gaze and expand the problem to a bigger reform agenda, I think it's just better time spent for political people to spend their time on that.
Question. No, we need the last senator, and you will be confirmed. That's what he told me. Okay. A friend of ours, Dorothy Zinberg up in Cambridge, was listening to me. She said, you know, the painter came in the other day, he's been painting my house, he was listening to it too. And he said, is there something wrong with Breyer? He seems sick. He takes a long time to answer any question. It's all right. You will get confirmed, said Berman, and I was. And of course it's nervous. Of course it makes me nervous. Of course it is. But what I think, and that comes out of several, 2 or 3 years there, I think that the senators will in fact ask the kinds of questions their constituents want to ask. And if they do not, they won't be senators for too long. So the people I want the 5th graders to talk to, or the 12th graders, or their parents, and the ones I want them to listen to, are not necessarily senators. They are the people who will go out and vote for those people. If you want to see the country turn a certain way, you have to convince those people, and they will then be an electoral base. That's called democracy. And what I saw in action in those times is democracy at work. And Kennedy also said the country swings from time to time. It swings back and forth. And sometimes it swings too far, and then too far over here, but it does change direction and it doesn't reach disaster. And that's what Churchill said. It's famous. You know, he said, America always does the right thing after trying every other possibility.
Now let me ask you, how did your days on the Senate Judiciary Committee, the legislative process, working daily for Senator Kennedy, how did that shape your approach to judicial decision making?
No,
I get the question.
early. It's a good question. I come in at 7 in the morning on my bicycle. And because I thought it was so interesting. Things were going on all the time. And it's really what I basically said. You're with a group of people. And they're trying to work out a problem. Small group, fine. Listen. The conference does not work in the Supreme Court if someone across the table has the impression that what I'm saying is really, ha ha ha, I have a better argument than you. All that will do is lead that person to think, ha, I have a better argument than you. And that will get us nowhere. But when that conference has worked well, it's worked well because I've listened, or people have listened to what the other person is saying. You don't have to agree with it, but you listen to where they're coming from. And then when you work out what they're coming from, if you're going to say something again, because no one talks until everybody's had one chance to talk. But nobody talks twice until everybody's spoken once. All right? And we have some discussion. And that discussion will work if you've really taken in where the other person is coming from. And then you try to produce something that will be helpful given that fact. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. I think that is seeing how he worked in that office. And really, when he says to you, or he says to me, work it out. We have an idea what he has in mind. And we'll do our best to to work it out, and sometimes we succeed.
The Kennedy alum know this from personal. We suggested Stephen, after the election, Reagan is the guy now who's appointing judge, or is about to appoint judges once he's sworn in. And we raised with Senator Kennedy, Stephen Breyer. And Breyer and Kennedy went to Thurman. And Thurman said, you've heard about Stephen Breyer's approach to the Judiciary Committee, working with Republicans. Thurman said, I like that idea. I'll let there may be 2 or 3 others, I'll let one vacancy be filled during the Carter administration when Carter's a lame duck. And Thurman rounded up all the Republicans. And Kennedy went to Stu Eisenstadt and said, Stu, tell President Carter we can fill that First Circuit lame duck. We can fill that First Circuit if we have the right nominee, Stephen Breyer. And Eisenstadt said, well, you'll never get that done because Thurman and the Republicans. And Kennedy said, I'll take care of Thurman and the Republicans. You take care of President Carter. And that's what happened. He made it.
It took a little bit.
He made it. Of course, the fact is that, as Stephen could explain, in previous months or a year, his young kids ice skated with Thurman's kids on weekends, and they spent some time together there too.
We had good win.